3. Joining me now on the John Fredericks Radio Network is Ned Ryun. Ned is the founder and the CEO of American Majority. He's also the author of a New York Times bestseller. He's got a new book coming out that we're looking forward to. Give me something to do while I'm home sheltering in place. And he's with us now. Ned Ryun, great to have you.
Yeah, great to be back with you.
So, Ned, late notice, but I wanted to get you on today because I want another take. My take on what happened yesterday, let me just lay it out. 3 quick things, and then I want you to respond. I hated the press conference for 3 reasons. Number 1, the phase 1, Dr. Fauci got up there and said, well, in order to get to phase 1, we have to open up the gate, and if there's a spike, we have to shut the gate. Nobody said what a spike is, so there's no metric for a spike. Does that mean the Denver Broncos linebacker gets infected and then we shut down Colorado? I don't know what that means. Second thing that bothered me is they say, well, in order to get to opening up the government, we're going to open up the businesses. We need 14 days of consecutive COVID cases going down. Not deaths, cases. Yet on the other hand, we have this massive testing effort to get millions of people tested. So testing goes up, cases go up. So to me, they're mutually exclusive, and that's not what they were saying through this. First it was beds, then it was ventilators, then it was body bags, then it was deaths, then it was therapeutics, then it was tests, then it was PPEs, now it's cases. Third thing I don't like. So the president said, hey, it's up to the governors. Really? So let me see. The governors of swing states that are Democrats, Colorado, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, they have no incentive to get their economy going. If things crash and burn, Trump loses, he's out. If they go bankrupt, they blame Trump for not giving them any money. They can't lose. But the end game is to get rid of Trump. Now, tell me where here I'm wrong.
So, my take was a little bit different, John. I understand those concerns. The whole spike, who defines it? I thought what was encouraging was when Trump said there's 30% of the counties in the United States for the last 7 days have not reported any new cases. I think what you're seeing and what I saw, my interpretation of this was, first of all, we're not going to let this go on forever. We're going to put an end to this. We're going to be back to work in several weeks. Donald Trump taking a stand and saying, we've listened to the Faucis and the Birxes enough. The models have been completely off. The data's been completely off. But we do know one thing for sure. 22 million Americans are out of work in the last 4 weeks. And, John, I'll point out so people have a little bit of perspective, we didn't hit 10% unemployment until the second year of the Great Depression, right? We blew past that in the first 4 weeks. And Trump is looking at that going, we are going to get America back to work. And I think what's happening, John, is this. First of all, we talked about it earlier in the week where you've got Abbott, you've got Ducey, you've got all these red state governors who are making more and more noise about the fact they were going to open up for business the first week of May, if not sooner. And so what I think Trump is seeing is, first of all, his instincts are kicking in, and he's saying, enough's enough. We've seen this. I think we've got a better handle on it. Time to reopen for business. So the other thing I was going to point out, too, with these, swing state governors, look at, Governor Halfwit up in Michigan. I think what we saw the other day taking place with that protest is just the beginning if she continues to insist on keeping the state shut down. So it's at their own political risk. I think that what you'll see is you might even cause, a second Tea Party-esque style of protests around the country, especially in these blue states and these swing states, where people are showing up and going, enough's enough. We've looked at the numbers. We've seen that this is not nearly what people had said it was going to be. You go back and look at the Imperial College models where 2 million Americans were going to die even if we had full mitigation and social distancing. And then you had the Washington model saying the same thing, and Dr. Birx saying we could have 250,000 Americans die even if we do everything right. People are starting to wake up and go, wait a minute, this isn't nearly what these so-called experts thought it was going to be. We do know one thing for sure, that if we continue on and people get more and more people lose their jobs, because I have to tell you this, John, I don't think the real number is 22 million Americans are out of jobs. I think the number's higher. I think we're probably getting closer to 20% of people that haven't actually filed unemployment claims. At a certain point, people have said enough's enough. You can talk about all your modeling and all your data and all your spiking and all that. We need to get back to work and get a job so we can pay our mortgages, pay our bills, all these things. So I think what you're seeing is Trump saying, okay, we've listened enough, we're going back to work. So I understand. I think Trump's going to look at this and say if there's a massive spike, fine. But if there's a little spike, folks, we got to get back to business. Our suicides and bankruptcies are far going to exceed the actual deaths from coronavirus.
How do you get there? I mean, there's been no metrics. Any metric we have has been so wrong. So you have to question everything. But they say, but Fauci gets up, and I really got to tell you, I can't stand the guy. I know he's popular. He reminds me of the Little Caesars. They had pizza. I just can't stand the guy.
Emperor Fauci.
He's now so distasteful to me. I'm physically recoiling when I see him. I mean, that is my disdain for this guy. I mean, he gets up and he's like, well, we're going to have to, if there's a spike, we're going to have to shut the gate. We're going to have to shut the gate right there if there's a spike. Well, define a spike. What is a spike? Some football player getting the flu, was that a spike? What's a spike? They never define that. So that leaves it open for any governor to say, well, we tried to open up these counties and, 6 people got sick. We had a spike, so we're done.
Well, I think what you're seeing, again, we didn't elect Fauci to run the country. I think Trump has listened to them enough, and I think what he's realizing is, hey, enough's enough. You weren't elected to run this country. I was. I think you're seeing where Trump is going, okay, we've done this for 4 or 5 weeks, and I hope by the next 4 weeks we're going to be back to business. He even said, I mean, and so, John, I ran the numbers. I ran the numbers just yesterday because I was doing some other interviews. Trump has looked at these numbers and realized 70% of the deaths happened in 5 states, right? If you look at New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Louisiana, 70% of the deaths have taken place there. You look at about 40 of the other states, they have 500 deaths or fewer, and most of those are 200 deaths or fewer. And Trump's just going and looking at this going, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to continue to test. And I have to tell you this, John, looking at more and more numbers from CDC, looking at reports coming out of Chicago, looking at the fact that in New York State, maybe 1 out of 7 already had coronavirus. I think this thing has already hit. I think people have already had it. I think people have antibodies that are walking around, maybe upwards of 30, 40, 50%. We don't know for sure. But I think what Trump is realizing is the numbers that he is most concerned about are the fact that if we don't get back to business, we don't just hit pause on our economy like we hit pause on a Netflix movie. We have to get going.
Okay, but if you're the governor of Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, Minnesota, Colorado, any of these swing state governors that hate Trump, okay?
Right.
You're the governor of any of them. What is your incentive to get your state back to work?
Political self-preservation. I mean, at some point, the people are going to look at Trump. They're going to look at these other red state governors who will be open for business.
Do you think Whitmer, Ned, Ryan, and Michigan made these decisions for her political gain?
I think what she's doing, we've seen little tyrants exposed. I think at some point political expediency is going to hit her right upside the head like a 2x4 when she realizes that what took place on the Capitol steps is going to explode when people realize we've got all these other states that are opening up for business, and you're trying to keep us to shelter in place and quarantine. At some point, I think if they continue to do this, John, I think it puts those battleground states even more on the map for Trump in the fall elections.
You think it'll backfire?
I do think it'll backfire. At some point, the American people can only take so much. And I say this, John, at some point when the American people get enough facts and enough truth for themselves, common sense and rational thought kick in, I bank on the American people's common sense and rational thought. And at some point, their common sense goes, this is idiotic and this is stupid. And I do think that there's enough of those people in these swing states that there will be severe political consequences for these governors if they try to extend it much further past the 1st of June. So I think a lot of these guys are going to open up in May. And the other thing, too, I'll point out, John, you see Ned Lamont, not even close to being a moderate Democrat governor out in Connecticut saying, he's realizing that their sales tax revenue has completely plummeted. Why is it completely plummeted? Because they have people sheltering in place and quarantining. At some point, the government's not going to bail them out. They have to figure out how they get back to business so they can start collecting revenue again. I just think there's a lot of different factors, John, where I think they really want to screw Trump. At the same point, are we going to screw ourselves or are we going to screw Trump? At some point, I think it all kicks in and they go, we got to open for business, guys.
Okay, so do you agree with me that this has got to be started as a red state revolt, that some of these red state governors, they've got to just bust out, open schools, go for it, and take a shot, right?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Trump even said there are dozens of states that are already ready to go into phase one. I think you might see some states reopen next week, but I would say for sure by the 1st of May, or I've been saying Monday, May 4th. I think they're ready to go. I mean, you're looking at these states, John. I mean, Utah has 20 deaths. I mean, you're looking at some of these places where there's been minimal impact, and they're realizing we've got to get out of the gates. We've got to get back to business. So I think you're going to see potentially dozens of states reopening for business the first part of May. And I thought the great part that I thought overall, the overarching theme was, we are not going to be in lockdown for 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. There is definitely a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not months away. It is literally weeks and days away from getting back to business. I think that was an important message. I know that we can quibble about how we define spikes and all that stuff, and I do think those are important questions. But there's hope. There's real hope.
I agree with you, and I thought the best part of his press conference is after Fauci doused cold water on everybody's world. Trump got back up and he said, no, the new normal is there is no new normal. You're going to go to an Alabama football game with 110,000 people. That's the new normal. We're going to get back to the life that we had, not this life where you got 8,000 people in a football stadium, 6 seats apart, everybody with a mask on. That is not what we want to do. I thought that was the best thing. But again, I mean, this guy Fauci gets up there. And, I mean, I thought, Trump started out, it was inspiring, we're going to get through this. And then he's like, shutting gates and spikes and opening gates. And, we might not be able to shake hands. We might not be able to shake hands with anybody for the rest of our life. Well, and then he goes on, what was that thing, Instagram or what does my son go on? Snapchat. And he's talking about, well, if you go to one of these sex apps and, you can have sex on the sex app, but it could be, it could be a little bit risky.
Tinder, Grindr, whatever the apps are.
I mean, I'm thinking to myself, what planet does this guy live on?
Well, I got to tell you, I think what Trump needs to do when things start to calm down, and I think we'll be calmed down by June, July, August, he needs to announce a blue ribbon panel in which he says, we are not going to let this happen again. I'm going to have a blue ribbon panel in which we examine what has the NIH been doing the last 10 years, what is CDC, what are all these government bureaucrats and agencies that receive tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. What are they doing, and why were we not as prepared as we could have been? We just had the swine flu hit us a decade ago. Why did we not take from that and go, we are not letting this happen again. We're going to apply the lessons we've learned. We're going to prepare for the next time something like this hits. I think that's what he needs to do so that the Faucis and the Birxes and everybody else are actually required to give answers. And the other thing that I want to look at, John, is why the hell do we keep on believing these so-called experts with their garbage assumptions and their garbage data, putting together these models in which we then go, well, these guys are like Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with God's unadulterated truth. At some point, we have to start asking, wait a minute, what are your models based on? What are your assumptions? What are your incentives? Why are you putting these things together? And then why are we listening to you to make these decisions that have been devastating to this country?
Right. You're spot on with that. There needs to be a whole revamp investigation of these experts because all these decisions were based on very flawed modeling. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth across America, live in Washington, D.C., your nation's empty capital. I'm with Ned Ryun. Ned is the founder and president of American Majority, also best-selling author. Go to AmericanMajority.com for that. Are we going to see football this fall?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to be back to schools open. I think you're going to see sporting events. I think you're going to see us back to – I don't want a new normal either, John. I want normal. I want us back to where we were. But, John, I was thinking about this in the quick break, and I want to share this last thought. As we start to have blue ribbon panels and have a discussion about how we don't let this happen again, I want to have a real debate on, did people die with the coronavirus or did they die from the coronavirus? And why the hell did we put in the CARES Act 15% Medicare incentives for people to either have primary or secondary diagnosis with coronavirus? We have incentivized some of these numbers, and I want to go back and have a real conversation. What are the real numbers? What was the real mortality rate? Let's have that conversation so we can make better decisions moving forward. I don't even know that I believe the actual death toll number that's being posted right now because of some of the things that are being done for incentives, but also because people are counting people that have died with coronavirus as though they've died from coronavirus, and that's simply not the truth.
Well, look at Mayor de Blasio in New York City 2 days ago.
Right, they upped their
numbers his number by 3,700. based on no evidence. They never even tested them if they had coronavirus. They simply said, well, there were these people that died, that there was 3,700 above average over a 10-year average. Therefore, it's got to be the coronavirus, even though nobody tested. They had no symptoms of it. They just had a stroke. Well, coronavirus. Come on.
There's going to be a chapter after this, John, called Mistakes Were Made. And I think we need to be honest about the fact that mistakes were made on a whole variety of fronts. Get to the bottom of everything, get to the truth, get to real facts, real statistics, and say, okay, moving forward, we're not going to do this again, and we're going to be better prepared. Because I will say this, the last thought is this, John. I think the coronavirus was a very big warning for the American people, not only on the manufacturing front, on the fact that our bureaucracy failed us, on the fact that our immigration system is broken. We might not be so lucky next time if all of those systems are still broken and the big one actually hits. So we better use this warning and use it wisely.
Thank you, Ned. Ryan, thank you for your time today. Go to AmericanMajority.com. Always good to have Ned. Let me read this text I got from one of our listeners. Didn't give his name. He says, John, I live in southwest Pennsylvania, and we have about 60 of 67 counties that have less than 20 COVID-19 cases. Also, our legislator just passed a bill to open us back up. But Governor Wolf is going to veto it. How about a shout-out to Pennsylvania listeners to call their reps to override the veto ASAP? There is hope here, sir, in southwest Pennsylvania.